the middle of June through July. And then I still had like the month of August and half of September for summer before I went back to freshman year. But camp was amazing because essentially it was, gosh, maybe 30, 40, 50 of us, different. It was for minorities. And so it was, but it's different people of color, different races and backgrounds. And we were all in different kind of health and science majors. And so physical sciences, health sciences, biosciences, the gamut. And we basically had the opportunity to stay on campus, live like freshmen, we took a beginning intro, was it chemistry? I think it was a chemistry class. And we basically had a schedule like we would as we were freshmen. And what happened was they gave us the opportunity to speak with advisors. They gave us the opportunity to like go over our schedule, take tours of the campus, and just essentially had our hands held into learning UC Irvine, like what it would be like as a student, how we'd have to manage our time to study, to take our tests, and to essentially do well so that we would matriculate as pre-med, science majors. And, it was very, very, very cool because I still speak to these women today, like some of my best friends I met at camp from UC Irvine. And so I'm pretty sure it's still going. Kika, friend, is so amazing. She's so sweet. And just, it was one of those great experiences where I had the opportunity to, from the jump, meet someone, an adult who truly cared about the well-being of students and their futures. And it was like woven within the organization, like within the program, such that kind of led me to the different programs that I worked with. Like I worked with CFEP when I was like a junior or a sophomore. I worked with Dr. Pilata, like different people throughout UCI. So
what was, you just used an acronym?
Oh, sorry. Center for Educational Partnerships.
Oh, okay.
Remember what I know, I have to remember what these things are called. It's been a while, but I think it's still called that. Center for Educational Partnerships. Gosh, from what I recall, and I don't know how things have morphed since then, but it was the Center for Educational Partnerships that essentially held all of the different programs that did outreach to help with matriculation and admission for minority and underserved students. So I worked for the MESA program as a sophomore, math, engineering, science. I don't remember what the A is. MESA, I do not remember what the A is, but it was essentially a high school outreach that we would go to different high schools in Compton and was it South LA? Might have been South LA. But we went and we would tutor kids on the weekend, and then we had annual, or were they quarterly? We had different events on campus that the high school students would come to, and we as MESA, students, staff workers would essentially be here on campus to guide them to the different tours, to I think they were were they pentathlons? I think they were different. I think the program had, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they were competitions or different things that the students would do. Nevertheless, it was an outreach program to kind of give them an idea of what they could do, what they could aspire to, and also to let them know that UCI was, an option, right? Because again, you don't know anything about UCI. Like I knew nothing about Irvine. I knew Orange County, I knew LA, especially growing up in the San Bernardino kind of high desert area. UCLA, UC Berkeley. I knew UC Riverside because I knew that area. but I never would have known about UC Irvine had I not seen it on the application and then, kind of did my own, close my eyes and pick type of a thing. But so UCI did a really good job at that time of reaching out and having programs to be able to reach out. I think at the time, Proposition 9, if I'm remembering correctly, had passed, and it was essentially, I believe, I don't know if it was removing affirmative action.
Oh, the Proposition
or
209?
was that it? Proposition 209? I think so. But I just remember that passing and it opening the opportunities to actually look at, minority students. Like, how you have to weigh, you have to weigh people's experiences differently. The fact of the matter is, an A student at Dominguez, in Compton is different from an A student in Santa Monica. Like, this is because there's different resources. Someone who was able to excel in AP in a lower income area, when they, had to transfer to even, or, do extra work to get college classes or to take AP, when, another student had it just there without the extra struggle. Like, you do have to look at the more robust nature, right, of student experiences. And at the time, that wasn't being done, and Proposition 209 opened the door for that to happen. So when
So for Prop 209, so I want to make sure I am getting it right and understanding which proposition you're talking about, because it was definitely 209 that prohibited
prohibiting?
It prohibited against discrimination, and
right.
And
it was prohibiting discrimination, but it wasn't necessarily speaking to, maybe that's what it was. They were going against it, saying it, they were saying it was affirmative action, but really it was just saying, no, you can't discriminate against students. If I recall properly, but this is all my memory, which is.
So it prohibited state governments from considering race, sex, or ethnicity. So that was in 1996.
Okay.
Yeah.
I came in 99, so it was very.
So it made it interesting for admissions officers and schools in general to think about how to proactively encourage students, minority students of color, underrepresented students, to accept them. You couldn't accept them based on, race, sex, or ethnicity.
Right. You
right.
had
So
to actually.
Yeah. And so, So that was 209.
Okay. I remember at the time being a part of what seemed to be the hope of a solution, right? Like to be a part of one of the various programs, MESA directly in the high schools, and then just the overall department of Center for Educational Partnerships, where there was this constant, I can't remember there was another program where, again, various high school students would come over the summer, they would stay for the summer, and they would take classes, and they would live as college students while taking various classes that would go back toward their high school units. But they also had the opportunity, again, to have the college experience, so that they were, so they were not, it wasn't just about college readiness, but it was about college being in the forefront, to know that they could do it. Whereas, I think in times past, not having those type of experiences or not having those type of programs, they may not have thought about it. A lot of kids, I know there were a lot of folks going to the community colleges that fed into UCI, Santa Ana College, I think Santa Monica College as well, and various community colleges. And I just remember it was definitely a time where it seemed like, at least at UC Irvine, I don't know if it was everywhere, but at least at UC Irvine, there were opportunities to reach out to make sure that weren't getting lost, and to help students essentially put their very best foot forward to be able to be considered, to be able to come in. And I remember UCI, I remember camp specifically, them kind of keeping us updated with the amount of success that they were having in recruiting more students of color within 1999, 2000, 2001, when I was there. So yeah.
So, you know, you saw UCI before you began. You had the 6 weeks
Yes.
opportunity to meet fellow students and faculty and staff. Can you tell me what some of your first impressions of the campus and the student population was when you entered the university?
You know, what's really interesting, because I went to camp and I was surrounded by my fellow people of color, I didn't have the culture shock that I think I would have had I not had the opportunity to kind of learn more about the university. So I remember thinking it was really big. I remember thinking it was bigger than I thought. I remember thinking Aldrich Park was beautiful, and I didn't quite understand how there was a huge park in the middle of this circle of a school. And I did not know what Lord of the Rings were at all, like at all. And so I really didn't understand Middle Earth and the dorms on the east side of campus. So I remember that being a little confusing the first while, because it's just like, I don't understand how these random names are so cool, like, because people were talking about it all the time, and they were just really, it just seemed to be this thing that I didn't know. So I remember that as far as a first impression. And then I remember being really surprised, if I can be honest, in seeing so many Asian students, because I had not had that. I just, growing up in Hesperia, you know, it was not that diverse. I think I was one of a few African Americans, and then I was friends with one of few, you know, Latinos, and you know, I remember meeting or knowing or having every now and again, you know, an Asian American or an Asian fellow student. But coming to UC Irvine, there were so many more Asian from different countries and different ethnic, I guess, backgrounds within Asia at UC Irvine. And so that, I think, was a bit of a culture shock, because it was just different. Like, it was a reminder of, right, the whole world, like, you know, I appreciate that about college in general. You have the opportunity to get a better sense of the world, because you're in a new bubble, but you're outside of your smaller bubble from wherever, homogenous or not, you know, place that you've grown up, but you're certainly used to, right? Like, you're used to whatever you're used to wherever you're from. And college sometimes allows you to be completely bombarded in a good or a bad way, depending on how, you know, someone wants to take it. But for me, it was a good way, because it was just a reminder. My dad being from Nigeria, always reminded me, you know, the United States is not the world. Like, it's the United States. Understand that. There are, you know, different, he would always say, you know, you're not Black, you're Nigerian. Like, what is Black? Black is a color, you know, like, you have to understand that there's people that are from different countries all around. Like, you need to know and understand that, because again, what's Asian? Like, there's a number of countries and people, you know, billions of people. And so to be really mindful of that. And so it's kind of one of those kind of crystallizing moments as a young person, where it's like, what your parent is saying makes sense in vivo, you know, they're not just talking. So yeah, I remember that for sure. There was that bit of a culture shock because it was just like, it was just different. But then it just wound up also being cool because growing up in this area where there was mostly Caucasian and white people, it's like, again, I appreciated being in a more worldly feeling space because it reminded me, it just reminded me that this is not the end all and be all. And it was kind of an inspiring thing to know, that I want to see the world. I wound up, studying abroad my last year as a result. So I definitely appreciate that about UCI, the diversity. Diversity is can be a trigger word because what encompasses the diversity. And there's certainly at the time I remember it feeling like, okay, it's not just homogeneously Caucasian, but but I'm still one of a few African Americans. I'm still I still have friends and know the plight, right, of the Latinos that were there at the time. I remember, unfortunately, it was always known, the percentages. Like, it was like, oh, this percentage group increased and this one did not. And so it was always known.
That's interesting. How was it known? I mean, how did you know?
It was just, I think it was just I think coming from camp, being in camp, it was something because camp they would recruit and try to help students decide to attend, or not decide to attend, because I think we already decided to attend when we were called, but, to help get acclimated. And so I think camp, whomever worked there was trying, like, they would be aware of that information. And so, as students, if you're talking to your leads or even just overhearing, truthfully, the adults or the people running the program talking about it, you find out eventually. And then also, now that I think about it, I wound up working with the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Enrollment Services. And so I was just kind of around information. I don't know that that it was necessarily talked about amongst my peers a lot, but it was definitely something that was just like somebody knew it and or heard it, and so then we would discuss it, type of a thing. So I know I overheard it and or heard it and was told something from camp, right? It's like, oh, the Latino population increased. This year was 8%, now it's 11%. Like, and so we would hear it from that perspective. And so it'd be like, that's great. But the thing is, as an African American, I would also hear or know that I think the percentage was maybe 4%, maybe 2%. I feel like it was low as it related to Black and African American folks then. And so therefore it was like, okay, but did our numbers increase? And if so, how much comparatively? And so yeah. That's so funny. Why would I know that information? Why would any of us? But we did. Like,
I don't know. I mean, did you feel that on campus in terms of, I mean, how can I phrase this? I mean, you mentioned being kind of aware of the percentages increasing or not, but percentages aside, did the Black African American community feel the challenges of the percentage that existed on campus, or was it aware of this? And if so, what was the response or feeling, if any at all?
That's a really good question. And if I'm honest, I'm feeling so far removed that most of my memories are so nostalgic, honestly, that I don't fully remember. And so I would hate, I don't want to say anything incorrect or out of turn. But I think I will say this. I remember, I just for myself, I know I remember feeling like any other time I felt, in the sense that I have often been one of a few who look like me in a space, and my goals, my movement was, they've never changed. It's to succeed, it's to do well, etc. And so I do not believe, and I don't recall having any experience where I felt discriminated against or hindered or anything like that. I think if anything, I just remember kind of that knowing and it kind of just being that regular kind of like, it would be nice if there was more, there should be more, like we are, it would be more representative if, but I don't know that, I can't say that it necessarily took away from my experience. I think there were some things that, because of the amount of, or rather the lack thereof, as it relates to the African American community, it affected kind of the things that we not were privy to, what's the word, that we had available to us. For instance, Black Greek organizations, right? Those, I remember there were a few chapters, and I remember specifically not necessarily our year, but I remember there were women, there were students, there were people who kind of had to forge various chapters, and there was a lot of kind of forging things around the time when I was there because they didn't exist. And if the school was bigger or had a bigger population, of African Americans, our group wouldn't have had to be the ones to forge it. Like, I remember the Black Leadership Advancement Coalition, which I still believe is a scholarship fund that continues to this day. I remember, my friend and roommate being a part of that inaugural, board who put that together and thought it up. And it was something that, our guard of, class of 1999, class of 2000, class of 1998, like I know for sure that, spawned, from our time frame. I can't say I remember why, because I wasn't in on the board's meetings. But again, it was one of those things where there were a number of things that happened that my peers and I kind of took on because they didn't exist, essentially. And so did that affect my experience? I mean, if I were to compare it to somebody else's, maybe, but it certainly, I don't feel hindered. I think the only things that when I look back and be like, man, I wish I knew then what I know now, it's just general knowledge, right? Like, man, I was so young. There was no way for me to know to, I don't know, talk to my advisors more, or, study in this way more. Like, you think of the things of how you could have been more studious or, change my major sooner. I don't know, just things, hindsight is 2020, and you're a genius when you're looking back. But there's nothing that in thinking back, like I never think of like, oh, I wish there were, I don't know, more Black Greek organizations, or there were more, things that were available to us, pretty much everything that we, at least from my remembrance, things that we needed were available if you search them out. And I had the good fortune of having mentors that were really accessible and, helpful, whenever we needed anything. And I think to some degree that's where there's a beauty in what can be considered a negative thing, is because we were so small and close knit, like we really had, like, for the advocates and for the mentors and for the staff and the faculty who were, for us and supports to us, they were for us and they were accessible, to be so many years out of UC Irvine and to know that Dr. Parham was like an assistant chancellor, a vice chancellor, like all of these things. And now he's the president at Cal State Dominguez Hills. Like, that was my African American study professor as a freshman. that was someone I consider a mentor. That's someone who, you know, wrote letters of recommendation for me for graduate school. That's someone who is this amazing man and scholar and, you know, intellect. And it's like, yo, you're doing, you know, this is a person who's doing big things in education. And I had the opportunity to not just know him, but be guided and learn from him. And similarly, you know, may he rest in peace, Dr. Juan Lara. He was amazing. I worked for him as a student assistant, and it was really, it was like, you know, sitting at the foot of, you know, my father's feet, listening to his wisdom and, you know, getting guidance and having him really challenged me to push myself harder. You know, I won one of the scholarships for the Black Leadership Advancement Coalition for community service. And I don't say he ripped my personal statement to shreds, but he, you know, he read it and he helped me rework it, and he pulled out of me, you know, a different means and way to write, express myself. And I mean, my goodness, I can't even begin to tell you like how much he did for me and taught me. And, you know, I don't know, like, I don't know that I would have had that if I'd gone to UCLA, truthfully. Like, if I had gone to a bigger school, if I had gone to a school who, you know, had kind of demographical proportions that, you know, that where no one group needed, you know, a little extra support or looking into or, you know, watching over, like, I don't know. But I'm thankful. I really, really am thankful. That's one thing. Like, you know, UC Irvine is it's definitely a place that I'll always hold dear, because to have been in a place where I, you know, literally grew up and can look back on so many experiences and memories, you know, because even, gosh, I was looking through the questions you sent, and I'm just like, man, what were the challenges? I don't even know that there were challenges specifically. I mean, shoot, outside of chemistry and like, man, outside of like scholastic, like, you know, kicking your butt as a student, you know, I don't remember there being anything, you know, truly like life-shattering, detrimental. Like, there were things happening in my life, there were things happening with my family, like as a person in general, life was happening, right? Like relationship drama, you know, friendships growing, learning, etc. You know, trying to get housing in Campus Village because it was a dang bear, because the on-campus apartments were where you wanted to live, except everybody wanted to live there, and you had to win a lottery to live there. Like, you know, there was a bunch of different stuff, but truly nothing that I would say, you know, was detrimental to my being able to be successful, my being able to do what I wanted to do. I mean, really, I just think back, you know, as a student and a young person, I needed to be more studious. But yeah, just as a community, I think our African American community was really, really close knit, and I appreciate that. I really do.
Well, you've said so much and touched on so many things that I'd like to follow up on.
Sure.
The first is, you mentioned, you know, during your years there, you and fellow students were forging, you know, different initiatives, programs, and that sort of thing, or those sorts of things. Were there any in particular that you that you worked on that you would like to share a little bit about?
Gosh, honestly, I don't remember. Nothing that was major enough to remember. I remember being a part of, I don't remember what it's called now, of course. Somehow it's been like 20 years. I don't know how. So my memory is not as long as it used to be, because it really used to be like yesterday. I was telling my husband a few weeks ago, I was just like, man, like thinking about UCI used to feel like thinking about yesterday, but now it's like, wait, I really have been out for some time, because I don't remember things about that as much as I used to. I remember being a part of a dance group that was really cool and really fun, and it wasn't Cabo Modern, but it was basically the Black Student Union's kind of group. And I remember when my roommates and another, gosh, Sabrina Johnson, amazing woman and dancer. I believe she and Cassandra, I remember a few of us, just decided to dance, and there was a number of folks. We'd get together and we would do. I remember we danced at the Black Gala. I remember we danced at it wasn't competitions, but it was like whenever there were like showcases, at school. And so yeah.
What kind of dance was it?
Well, we did an African dance. It just depended. It depended because the dancers who did the choreography were so talented. So it was just like, whenever, I guess, say Cabo Modern was having like a showcase, and so it was like the different groups on campus that had dancers, you could do it. So we did hip hop one time. I know at the Black Leadership Advancement Coalition gala, we did an African dance. We did praise dances. So there was an AME church, Christ Our Redeemer AME church was on campus for a while. That was amazing too. I tell you, so many great experiences. That was on campus for a while. And so we also did a praise dance for them. And so, yeah, I remember really, really enjoying that. I remember I performed a poem for the Black Leadership Advancement Coalition, one of their galas. Yeah, I remember considering being a part of the group that was going to be what wound up being the first Delta line and chapter. So I remember that. But yeah, nothing that I can think of specifically that I did alone. Oh, you know what? Wow. How did I forget this? So I did not forge it. I don't know that I would call it forging it, but I definitely, myself and Cassandra Costello Chase, we were the kind of, how do I put this? We were the event coordinators for the Black graduation. That is what we did, and that is what I helmed and kind of took pride in for a number of years. So we helmed the because I came in 99, so 2000, I think, for 3 years. So it was like, it was definitely 03 and 02. I think 02, 03, and 04. I graduated 04, so I didn't do it, but I helped people do it because I wasn't going to do it. So yeah, I think I did 01, 02, and 03, and then I was in 04. So yes, oh my goodness, how could I forget that? That was so much work. Oh my gosh.
And this is Black grad.
Yes, I did Black grad. We were in the social science lecture hall forever. I remember I didn't sign the paperwork correctly to get the gifts for all of the student awards, and had to go back and got in trouble, and Dr. Parham had to sign papers. Oh my goodness.
Could you tell me a little bit about Black grad?
Yes. So Black graduation was the Friday night before the Saturday morning graduations for the university. And every year we would have the Black students who are graduating that year, invite their families to come park and come to the social science lecture hall to watch their grads walk across the stage so that they could hear their names and see them clearly and take pictures clearly, because of the next day it was going to be the big ceremony. And yeah, I remember there were two speakers, there were two student speakers. We always tried to have a male and a female if possible for whomever applied. We had at one point, we would have them do 30 seconds. It was a video clips that we would run and let each graduate essentially say their personal thank yous to friends, family, etc. And you know, there would be music, and we provided everybody with kente cloth, they're not shawls. What are those darn things called? The
stoles?
Yes, the graduation stoles that they could wear at the graduation, the main graduation, so that they would have the Black grad stole in addition to whatever their stole for their, you know, their school was. Gosh, yeah, and we were able to, over time, you know, raise money throughout the year so that by the end of it, we would be able to give a graduate, you know, a plaque, you know, some UCI swag, and, you know, depending on who, I think we also had them, did we have them vote? I think we had them vote on a couple of folks. I don't remember if it was like, I forget what God, I have to think about that. I forget what we had them vote on, but there would be a couple of, it was the teachers. It was favorite professors. That's what it was. It wasn't for students. It was the student speakers, I believe, got something. And then it was like, what faculty member were we honoring? And then we'd have the videos, and it would always run too long. We would schedule it for, I think, 2 hours, and, you know, it would just go all into the night. And sometimes we were able to cater it. I remember some years were leaner than others, but I think one of the first ones I was able to do was when we had the most funding. And so, you know, we had this great celebration of a graduation, and then we were able to have it UCI catered, and people had hors d'oeuvres and were walking around the courtyards and just taking pictures and talking. And it was always such a fun time. Extremely stressful because I was the one coordinating it, but it was super, yeah, it was such a super cool thing. I've got so many pictures, if I think about it, for many years from people graduating. So yes, hey, I did do some stuff. That was one thing that I was very, very involved in. And
this was student-led, and this was a student-led.
Yes, it was student-led. I will never forget, actually, it was 01, because I remember essentially it was the folks who were the 4th and 5th years when I came in were like, okay, we're getting ready to graduate. This is Black grad. Here's all of kind of the background, you know, can you help us? And it was like, I help us. And then I wound up doing it. It was just like, I thought I was helping. And so, but because I was able to like get it done, it just kind of became the thing that was known. And I had enlisted my friend Cassandra and I think some other people, and just kind of became this known thing that I was doing. And so that was something I did annually for a few years. That, yeah, we did that. And then another thing that I did with my friend Cassandra was the alphas on campus. They would have their Black and Gold scholarship pageant. And so my friend Cassandra, and some other girls from different universities competed in the first annual pageant. And then from then onward, she and I were essentially the coordinators of their pageant. So when students, young women, would apply and be a part of it, we essentially would create what the pageant experience would be. We would create what their routines would be. We basically did the entire run of show, where it was like we would help them with their, you know, how do you answer your interview question, you know, what's your talent gonna be, you know, all of the different things. And so yeah, that was something that she and I did for many years. I think we even did it after we graduated because we were still close with some of the alphas who were still in school. And so yeah, it's so funny. Event planning is kind of like it's like my hobby. It's something I do naturally. And so I remember just jumping in and doing that, like coordinating events and different things on campus, just because it's something I do. I never thought of it as, I never realized how much work it was, honestly, like until looking back, I'm just like, what did I do for free?
Yeah. I mean, how significant were these sorts of events for the African American community or the Black community?
They were very significant. I know the Black grad. I mean, talk about a staple. And honestly, because that first year, I want to say it was either the first or second year, because of, again, I think it might have been the second year. There was a year when, there was a first year that I helped, so I didn't fully kind of know. But after I knew and started getting things together, there was a year where I'm telling you, the gifts we had, people got sweatshirts, and we were able to raise money in order to really get, give good gifts, cater it well. And so, and, it just made it kind of an event. Like it was just the thing where it's just like, you knew that you wanted to go to and that you were getting ready for Black grad. I remember people talking about Black grad more than their actual graduation, because it was just like, did you get my stuff? Am I gonna be, my parents are coming, etc. And so yeah, I remember that. I remember it being super, it was kind of a, it was just a tradition where folks knew and were, loving that. And then I think with the pageant, I think anything as a college student where you get to kind of gather and have a nice experience, because it was a scholarship pageant. So, you did have to pay for tickets, and it wound up being, something where you were helping your fellow, students or whatever. But it was always, anytime we were able to have an event, put on an event, it was just kind of, it was an excuse. It may not have been a party, but, you make it a party at some point, and I think it was always, they were really big. They meant a lot. And especially at UCI, because there were so many things that we went to off campus. There were so many things, and again, I think back and I'm so thankful for my experience, because I met so many people from different campuses, because it was kind of the way in which our small, excuse me, our close-knit group was able to expand or kind of link into other groups. And so because I had friends that were alphas, and because they were alphas, they therefore were meeting alphas that were at UCLA, University of Southern California, etc. I mean, Fullerton, there's so many, I've got so many friends and know so many people from that time frame, from so many different universities, because we all just kind of, it was like we were all our small groups, when we got together, we were a force and we were together. And, it wasn't, you don't feel like you're a small group when everyone is together. And so I remember that would always mean a lot. And because we would, everybody would support each other. And so, folks from USC would be at our pageants, folks from Fullerton would be, Long Beach would be, etc. And so yeah, it wound up being something that was very meaningful, because again, it wound up being something that brought people to Irvine versus us always having to go into LA or going over to Long Beach, and having to kind of leave what most considered, kind of this sheltered, Orange County is such an interestingly situated place of, sunshine and near the beach and all these things. And so yeah, we always had to go to LA, it seemed like, to go to a party or to go to something to get like college experiences amongst our own folks. And when we could have the pageants, when we had the Black grad, when we had I mean, sometimes the alphas would put on parties, not often, but when we had certain things where we could reach out to our extended communities to then come, it was always nice because it was like, hey, we're hosting it now, and we get to have, the big group together.
So how did you trying to understand a little bit how you connected with other groups at other campuses? Was it through the sororities and fraternities, or were there other ways?
I think primarily yes. So it's really funny. I myself am a very unique person amidst the 1999 and 2000 school, like when we first started, because literally when I tell you, and I think one other person, am like the only one that didn't go Greek. But everyone, like all of my friends, alphas, we didn't have sigmas at our campus. Omegas, the AKAs, eventually there became deltas. My best friends at SG Row, like when if I really sat back, started looking through pictures, and like everybody was in an organization. And so at some point, I was just always around people that were from Greek organizations. And so because my friends were in them, they would then introduce me to their friends who happened to be in them. And those friends would come to see them on campus but they were from other campuses. And so I know that's the majority of the way that I met people from off campus, because basically by association, because I didn't have a car. And whenever we'd hang out, or do certain things, or we'd find out about something or go off campus, it would be for a reason, which was often a party, sometimes a beach day, or like some sort of like community put together gathering. But yeah, for the most part, what would happen is, as I'm thinking about it, for some of the events, and I can't even think, what would those events be? You know what? They would always be the, what are they called? I don't even remember what they're called anymore. The events where they would have the new line of newly initiated Greek folks. I'm totally blanking on what those are called. But whenever they would have those sessions, that's when a lot of folks would come to campus, because they would come to support their Greek organization and the new people that were being, that were newly a part of their organization. And so that was often a time where it was like, hey, more Black people. Hey, there's more folks on campus. What is this? And so you just, that was kind of the way we met, cross-pollinated, and just kind of stayed, very fluid. Like, when I think about it, I don't know how it is now. I'd be interested to know if it's still a kind of a close-knit cluster of universities, because I remember the alphas had a joint chapter with Cal Poly Pomona, Fullerton, and UC Irvine. And so because of that, you meet people. I remember there was only one Omega at UC Irvine. And so he became an Omega was able to become an Omega because he went to Fullerton, where there were Omegas. And so therefore that then brings Fullerton to our campus. I remember there were a lot of alphas at Long Beach. And so when I think there were already a couple of alphas, or no, there was one alpha when I started. And then a year later, two more were initiated and came in. And so since there was alphas on campus, I remember like basically half of the guys that I came in with in class of 99 all became alphas. So it's like literally, you're my play brothers, excuse me, as we come in at freshmen. And by, sophomore year, you're alphas. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I don't actually know what that is. I'm a sophomore. Like, you're still just my friend who's supposed to help me with my homework. Like, so it just, it was never something that was important to me. It was just kind of like, it's a group that you joined and you affiliate with or you associate yourself with, but I just know you, and and so I treat you as you. But I do know that's definitely how the linkages happened, and as well as how they kind of came to campus, and therefore how I was able to meet folks and know them. So yeah.
It's really great to hear about how the different campuses connected with each other during that time. So thank you for sharing that.
For sure.
You mentioned that there was a church on a campus, and that was a part of kind of the social life, I guess, on the campus as well.
Yeah. So Christ our Redeemer, AME Church. I remember, I forget how or why I wound up going to a Bible study, but I remember going to a Bible study, and Pastor Mark Whitlock was leading the Bible study, and I was there with a couple of my friends, and it was just interesting. I mean, I hadn't gone to church before, but I knew about, I went to Catholic school, so I'd been to church and I'd read the Bible and different stuff, but like, we didn't go to church, but I knew God, I knew the Bible, I should say. And it was just kind of it's kind of like education and being Nigerian. It's just like, you know it, you believe it, and you just go about life, right? But then going to the Bible study and kind of talking with Pastor Mark, like he helped me kind of think about like religion and my relationship with God personally. And then one of my good friends that I went to camp with, she actually gave me my first Bible. And because she had been going to church all her life. And so she also kind of helped me to think about from the perspective of not just a relationship with Christ and a relationship with God in a broad sense, but really like what does it mean to me, and what is that? And so that was kind of the start of it. And then, God, what year was that? I might have been sophomore year. But basically the church was on campus for as long as I was there. And then right after I graduated or right before I graduated, they were able to purchase their own building in Irvine. And so so church services wound up being at the building, and they had a community center and various things, but it wound up being just this great resource for spiritual growth, for support and encouragement. I think Pastor Mark is now actually out here in Maryland. I have to look him up. But I know he was there. He pastored it for a long, long time. I know one of the assistant pastors, Reverend Najuma Smith, she is amazing. And I remember speaking with her and working with her and just hearing her preach. And man, she was the type of person, she is the type of person who's just herself, but she loves God and, speaks to God and hears from God, and, and taught me how to do the same, to the point where it was just a great foundation for me in, not really in religion as much as just, again, growing in my relationship with God. And so it was definitely another piece of my UCI journey where it was just like, right, again, I grew so much, like, and I, from 17 to 22, of course one would, right? But I just, there's a lot of things that I had the great fortune to experience, to learn, from different people, different experiences, and from different programs and organizations that I can't imagine, like, how would I have learned or known to, think deeper about my relationship with God had I not gone to this Bible study, gone to core regularly as a church, and made it a part of my day-to-day, in everyday life. To then, when I graduated, started looking for another church and wound up going to my aunt's church, and it just, to the point where I'm actually in ministry now, and, in addition to all the things I do. And so it's one of those things where it's like, man, when you look back, you see where the seeds were planted and watered. And then you're like, oh, that's where this plant, this tree, this bloom came from. Like it really did start there. And I didn't even, I wouldn't think about it now because I'm just living. Like I'm living in the bloom of it all and continue to grow all the time in different ways. But that definitely was the start for sure.
Out of curiosity, where did they hold the services on campus?
Oh, the social science lecture hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've talked so much so far about social life, but you did mention a number of mentors that were important to you. So Professor Juan Lara and Dr. Thomas Parham. And so I wanted to circle back to that and hear a little bit about, your academic experience and if there were others at the university that helped to shape your trajectory.
Well, I'll say this. I came in pre-med, but I didn't even know what I signed up for, in the sense that like I literally chose undecided physical sciences because number one, I wasn't sure specifically what I wanted to do within the physical sciences, but also didn't actually understand what physical sciences was at 17. Like I thought, for whatever reason, it wasn't in the catalog, or at least it wasn't clear to me what physical sciences meant. Chemistry, physics, like all these things. No, ma'am. That was a 17-year-old reading and reasoning and not understanding. And so while in camp, when I got to speak to the advisor, they said, okay, well, why did you apply to this? Or, why did you sign up for this? I said, oh, because, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I know I wanted to be pre-med. And so physical sciences, that seemed like physical, right? And it's science. No, ma'am. No. So then they explained to me, I know, I think back on these things and I'm just like, wow, really? Oh, dear heart. So, but at the same time, God loves me, man, because camp, what would I have done? I would not have known. So in camp, because I saw the advisor, even before I started, they were able to change my major. And I think I got changed I still was undecided, but they changed me to, I think it was bio-sci or something that was more in line with what pre-med was, because at the time I wanted to be pre-med. And so I stayed that for a while as I had the opportunity to kind of figure out, okay, what do I want to do? And so I remember that first year, unfortunately, chemistry kicked my ever-loving behind. Like it was not computing. And so I had, so I really was getting bad grades, and it was like really frustrating because I'm just like, I don't know the sea life like this. Like it was just really not okay. I did great in humanities because it was writing. I took a psychology elective because I had taken psychology as a senior in high school and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, oh, well, this will be a nice elective so I can offset my GPA because I will get better grades in psychology than what chemistry is doing to me right now. And so I was taking psychology, and I really, 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 really enjoyed it. Like when it came to class and information, I really enjoyed it. And so I didn't change my major for a while, but I wound up going the route to change my major to psychology and social behavior, because the psychology major was very research and theory driven, and psychology and social behavior was a little more applied and socially driven. And so in looking at the classes, they were much more interesting to me. And so I basically took that trajectory while staying kind of an undecided bio-sci major. But after my first year, I definitely stopped being pre-med because I was like, if organic chemistry is harder than chemistry, and I am literally running into a wall, I can't do it. And so, yeah, I wound up majoring in psychology, and there aren't any, I can't think of any other professors that stand out. I remember taking African American studies with Dr. Thomas Parham, and I remember that being really, really great because there's something about, professors that make you think analytically and make you think past your initial thoughts, right? It's like, okay, I'm reading a book about something in the African diaspora, and the words that are being stated make sense. So therefore, it makes sense. But he really pushed us to take a step back, look at the context. When was this written? Who was saying it? Who were they talking about? Was this someone who was a part of the diaspora and therefore they're talking about it from a place for which they know? Or, is it someone who is not of the diaspora and therefore are they talking about it from a place where they think they know? And so he opened my mind to like thinking more critically, which was amazing to me because I already thought I did think critically. And so it was just like, wait, there's more. And so I remember that being really, really great. And then with Dr. Lara, I'll never forget, I started, I had a work study. And so it was like applying to different positions because the MESA program, I think was part-time. It was, seasonal based on whenever they would have, there's just different sessions. And so it's like, okay, what can I do that's a little bit more steady? And I think Kika mentioned, that he was looking for somebody. And so I applied. And I remember there was a gentleman who was working with him as well. I don't know if I think he was a graduate student. And I had been, student assistant, you're like pushing papers, you're doing stuff, you're helping out their actual assistant, to not get bogged down, etc. And I'll never forget Dr. Lara came by one time and he was just like, oh, how you doing? And I said, oh, great. I finished everything. So I'm just, I'm here. He's like, oh, you finished everything. Okay. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you wipe this down? Did you do that? And I was just like, was I supposed to? Oh my goodness. And so I said, oh no, but I'll get to that or whatever. And it was one of the first times that I met him. So I wasn't like, I didn't know him to know that he was really being funny. And so the grad student pulled me aside and said, never tell your employer that you finished what you're doing, that you don't have anything else to do. Never. I said, oh, okay. So I've never forgotten that. It's like, no, there's always something to do. Don't worry. I am working very hard. Thank you. So yes, that was the first of the many lessons for years that I received from him. And but yeah, I know they are they're the most memorable and the most poignant. There are a few folks. Gosh, Javon Hunter. I know he doesn't work there anymore, but he was one of my supervisors who I think was getting a PhD at the time. Like, he was really cool. Darlene Boyd. What is the name of her program? I can't even remember, but I promise you, Darlene Boyd, out of the Center for Educational Partnerships, the program that I cannot remember, she was the program manager of it, and she was really, really cool, really sweet. Yeah, Santana Ruiz, who I think is still at UC Irvine, and I know he has done amazing things. I don't know if I feel like he's a chancellor now. He must have been. Like he and Dr. Lara, I remember, I work with Dr. Lara specifically, but I'd always run into Santana, and he was always so cool and so helpful and everything. And so yeah, they those are some names and some folks that I remember. But when I think about UC Irvine and I think about having been, mentored, I think of my pastors, I think of my mentors, Dr. Parham and Dr. Lara, and I think of the experiences. I think of like the people who, to this day, like I can, reach out to, and we can reminisce, to my best friends who, I met there. And yeah, it's definitely one of those things. It's just fully pleasant memories and nostalgic. So yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. Can you tell me a little bit just about how what you were up to now and how your UCI experience may have influenced your current reality, if you will?
Currently I am living in Maryland. I moved here with my family recently. I am working for a foundation as a grants and contract specialist. And prior to that, I went to school for a psychology degree and had every intention of being a child psychologist. And grad school is no joke to get into. And so many an attempt, and I didn't get in. But along the way, while I was working on different grants and doing research, I basically, have just found myself into research administration and all that that entails. And I think in order to kind of circle it back to UC Irvine, I think one of the things that UCI really did for me was gave me the opportunity to practice pivoting, to practice, working hard and to moving forward where the road would take me. And so as much as I had the goal of being pre-med, and I was like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm being a pediatrician. But it was just like, if this is the road to do that, I'm not doing well in this. Like, I'm just not. And so maybe it's not. Okay, let's take a look back. And so I think UCI really gave me the tools to reassess and not shut down, right? Like instead of like, oh my God, I'm not gonna have a future, I'm failing chemistry, I can't move forward. It's like, no, this probably isn't it. I remember speaking to many an advisor who would just be like, okay, but there's a bunch of majors. What do you like? Like there's a bunch of things that you can major in that you can do. And, because I had that, I really look at life like that. It's like, okay, this isn't working. What can, what will, what's next? And so career-wise, I would say, really in all ways, but I can see it very directly kind of paralleled to that, because again, I had the trajectory to do one thing, and in moving forward towards that, I learned a new skill and a new way, and then I was excelling in this, and the doors weren't opening in one way, but they were opening in another. And so, okay, you pivot and you move forward. And I've done well, and enjoy what I'm doing, and it's been a really a cool experience. So yeah.
As you reflect on your time at UCI as a Black student, are there any reflections or advice you can offer to current and future students or faculty and administration about how to help the community thrive at UCI?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. That is a wonderful question. I would say to the students, know that you are there for a reason. It's not a mistake. It's a great opportunity. And don't allow the demographics or what may seem to be limiting factors limit you, because it really is a type of microcosm of the world. And if you can navigate there, successfully, you'll be able to navigate anywhere. And you want to make sure that you approach it from that space of success, from that space of overcoming and ability, versus focusing on limiting factors. Because the fact is, not everywhere is going to be perfect, and not everywhere is going to have everything that you want or feel that you need. And also know that anything that you think you're not receiving or that you need, make it, find it. You know, it doesn't have to come strictly from UC Irvine. There are many universities, you know, within the Southern California area that may have something, even if it's just an idea that you can steal. I don't say steal, but, you know, utilize, think of, like, okay, they're doing that there. Why can't we do it here? Guess what? You can figure out a way to. There's no reason you should feel limited. So if you find yourself feeling that way, take a step back and really think about it, because UCI does have a whole lot to offer. You just, you know, sometimes you have to look under a rock instead of, you know, up on a board, right? Like, it may not be right in front of you. So that I would definitely say to students. To faculty and staff, I would say, you know, those of you who are, you know, Black, African Americans, of color, like, please keep doing the great work you're doing. Please keep encouraging us, we, they, the students, because at that age, and, you know, try to remember where you were, like, the encouragement means everything, and the direction and the help, and the wisdom, it means everything, you know, from being a smile as an administrator when they come in to talk to you, to being a, you know, a resource to give ideas as a mentor, to, you know, being a firm but, you know, really approachable leader or boss, you know, while they're working for you. Like, really remember that you're in a position to really cultivate the experience, the minds, and the you know, the trajectories of some people, from some young people, and that's not to be taken lightly. And I truly am an example of what that is and what that means. So would definitely say that. And then to the administration, I would say, do not don't think you've ever arrived. It really can always be better as it relates to being open to hear from your students' voices. You can always learn more. You can always hear more. And there is always going to be something more that can be done to do what's necessary for our group, this group of students. You know, the goal need not just be numbers. The goal really need be to create a space that is safe, that is inclusive, that is, I want to say loving, like, truly, like, may we all know as students that we're, you know, we're loved and we're valued, and, you know, that we too can thrive, and that you want us to thrive, and that, you know, we're not just numbers on the UCI brochure, right? So yeah, I would say, I guess I would say that.
Thank you for such a thoughtful response to that question. Really appreciate it.
For sure.
We covered a lot of topics about your experience at UCI. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
Gosh, no, I feel like I've just rambled in my reminiscing. No, I think that's everything. I appreciate it. I will say that UCI as a university has grown, evolved, and I'm so proud of it as a university. I'm so thankful. You know, I think about where I was many moons ago, and I literally have seen my degree appreciate. And you know, that's something that you can't always say, or, you know, see the growth in the movement. And so I'm I'm thankful for that.
So my last question for you is, if you could describe your UCI experience in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
Oh gosh, another good question. I would describe my experience at UCI as fun. It was fun. It was a major growth, a huge growth, place of growth for me. And fun, growth, and gosh, transformative. I would say transformative. It really, I know it's a major, major reason I am who I am. And so, yeah.
Ebere, it's been so great to hear your stories
Thank you.
about UCI. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for
Yes.
participating in this project.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate having the opportunity.
And 10.